In the time before the Titans, before the gods of Olympus, a great battle was waged.
Hello there, Sarah from 17 once again. This is my God of War Titan difficulty. This is Ascension, which I just missed out because I'm a moron. And this is the shoulder of Apollo and my least favourite fight in the game. The strategy for this fight is more than simple, the execution is awkward. You're going to be taking on a ton of the standard goats. Some have bowlers, some have shields, some have swords. There's a lot of them, they swarm you at times, and you want to throw them off the edge as quick as you can, or throw them at the elephants, because the biggest danger in this fight is the vulnerability that you have between throws, and the probability that when you use throw, he's going to try and grab something you can't grab. Because this game, for whatever reason, has a much less reliable spamming throw mechanic. And I don't know if that's for better or for worse. I don't know if that's intentional to stop people doing it. But this is the first fight where I really noticed I was getting swarmed and I was getting hit when I was just trying to throw things. So you're going to see me use a lot of magic. You're going to see me roll around like a psychopath using the clone of Orcos. And the biggest tease in this room is the fact that there's two chests. There's a semi-full magic heal and a semi-life heal. And you just don't have time to pick them up. You really don't, because the amount of times I've been doing really well in this fight, I've gone to pick up a life chest and I've been killed by a bowler off screen or by an elephant running into me is unbelievable. So I would say that the best advice that I can give is ignore the chests. If you get an opening and you're quick enough, good for you. You've managed to do what I really couldn't do. But I just treated this as, one life bar, tried to just play better, because I get tagged a lot by things that at the time I perceived to be a little bit cheap, but just look at this. There hasn't been a single fight where these enemies have been in this number or have been this aggressive, and this actually reminded me of God of War 2 on Titan, because the enemies were always up your ass. They were like suppositories. It was just unbelievably intense at times. But every so often they will pacify and you can just throw them. If you can stun the elephants and use the elephants to kill them, that's going to help you. But right now I'm in a spot of bother. There's my clone once again. I also found a lot of holes with that clone ability on this fight. Sometimes I would go hold left trigger and press triangle to summon the clone, and he'd do the freeze time. Oh, there we go. I got a window. A window to heal. That is very rare, that right there, folks, but I got lucky. And it doesn't look like much, this fight at all, but I died more times here than I did on the Trial of Archimedes. That just goes to show, I don't like this fight at all. But hopefully you'll have no problems. You'll not even notice that this is any tougher than it was on hard if you're playing Titan. And the majority of folks aren't even going to touch Titan because, I don't get people sometimes. Everybody plays games for a different reason. I appreciate that, and I do respect the fact that everybody can play a game how they intend to. But to me, not playing a game on its most challenging setting is kind of like not getting your money's worth. It's strange. I just don't get that. And speaking of a video that I watched the other day, I mentioned him earlier, a guy called Big Benedict, who's doing a God of War Titan difficulty guide too. So if you want a different voice over your video with different gameplay, feel free to check his out. There was a comment on his page, and it was so fucking ignorant, it really bugged me. And a lot of people are going to find this petty, because not everybody appreciates gaming like I do. But somebody said that there is no point in playing it on Titan. There's no reward for doing it. There's absolutely no reason to do it. It's just a waste of time. And that mentality right there are people I hate. They really are. And it's nothing against the person. It's that mindset. Because, there was a time before all these trophies and before all this fancy shit and before all this unlockable bullshit where you just played a game because you wanted to play a game. And you played a game for a challenge or for whatever reason. And that statement to me is... that is the same statement in my eyes as saying, why would you read a book when you can watch TV? And I hate it. I really do. And it's funny too, because A lot of people will argue there's no point in trophies or achievements. You know, lesser so people will argue that there's no point in gaming. I have a handful of friends who have no interest in gaming, who just don't get it, don't understand it, and think it's a waste of time. You could be doing something much more productive. So it just seems very strange that, you know, for a community that gets a lot of shit from the outside world, that's relatively small but growing, you know, growing astronomically, would be so keen to berate itself, and I don't understand that. But we're back in the furnace. We're back to twisting this thing, because we like twisting it, and we're going to be using that flint thing again, I believe, or just twisting this. We're going to be doing weird stuff. I say twisting that flint thing, I meant this, twisting the cog. And now we're going to get a different animation as something else does something else. And it's all very engineering-y and mechanically, but it did something good, and that's all that matters. So now that that chain is working, that enables the, I think it's the lantern, to be pulled up. And you saw me skip the cutscene there, where I should have really trimmed that out, but I didn't, and I have no excuse. So this is interesting. This is the fight where I realised that these armoured guys, your best bet is to just parry them. You know, after messing around with them for so much throughout the game, the easiest way of dealing with them is just parry. And a lot of this game has, this guide especially, has been a learning process of the best way to fight certain enemies. And the cool thing about that is it gives me retrospect, so when I do add the commentary, if I'm doing something in the video that can be done differently or can be done in a more effective manner, if I'm aware of it, I can then tell you in the commentary and hopefully save you some time. Because what you want to do here is obviously, you want to smash the armour on the guys, you want to throw them in the fire. And it should be pretty simple, but I'm going to make it look a lot more difficult than it needs to be, because I didn't have a good way of killing these enemies, and I didn't want to just spam the attacks. Because one thing in God of War I've always found really boring is just mashing the blades. And it's strange, it's very strange, because I never get bored of throwing enemies. There's something satisfying about whipping people around, but the standard combos, especially when you don't feel like you're doing any damage, it can feel a bit disheartening at times, so I've never really had much of an ambition to do that, and that's why you've not seen me, you know, do these big long combos all the time, because it's just not how I play. And there's a parry, which I should have got earlier. I don't know what I was doing there, I was just being really sloppy and getting injured for no reason. So I am sure you will be playing this at a much better level than I'm displaying right now, but this is just one of those moments where I didn't have a good strategy for this area, and I thought I could just wait it out. But you can't, you have to keep killing the enemies. Also, you'll see a transition there where my life has come back. Once again, this game is very kind with the checkpoints when it comes to refilling you. I assume I'm going to go for a parry. Oh, that's a failed parry. Like, look that. That guy just then did more damage to me than some of the heavy attacks of bigger enemies have. How does that make any sense? And I just don't get it. I don't get this difficulty at all. I really don't, because I loaded up God of War 3 yesterday to see the responsiveness of the combat, because a lot of people on the comments were mentioning that they've ruined it, and they haven't. They've kept it very close to what's in God of War 3. They've just made some changes to certain mechanics, and I disagree with most of them, I do. But at the same time, you know, you can't just keep on releasing the same game. This game is getting so much shit for being the same, but they have changed a lot of things. So much so that I think a lot of, you know, experienced players are going to be put off by what they've changed. I've seen already numerous threads of people talking about patching the original counterattack system, which I prefer it too, guys, I do, but that's what makes this game different. The new counterattacking system is very different. It's also very powerful. It's much more powerful than it used to be. That might just be, you know, retrospect, where I can't really remember the old games because I haven't played them in so long, but the new system seems to be significantly more deadly, and it's tougher to do because of that, even though I personally find it easier. Because parrying on the old God of War seemed to be more of a you blocked at the right time because you were pulling the block up anyway type thing. Get the chest, by the way, guys. I didn't realise when this lift goes up that it was going to leave the chest behind, so I ended up, you know, like an idiot, not having a full life bar. But it's all good, because there's another transition, and my life is magically filled again. But the only thing awkward here is the fire guy with the hammer. You see that? I couldn't roll out of the second hit because the first hit stunned me in time for the second to land. I disagree with that completely, but it's my punishment for getting hit by a very easy to avoid attack. The irony being, I'm going to make it look like that attack is very difficult to avoid, because I pretty much don't avoid it ever. Doesn't make any sense at all. But getting back on tangent anyway, when I plugged in God of War 3, and I loaded my save file, and the last save file that I had was the one when I made the guide that's on YouTube and is now covered with ridiculous music thanks to the copyrighted song I had on the intro. The save file was 14 hours and something to beat that game on Chaos. This game took me 8 hours to beat on its hardest difficulty, and this is a shorter game, but it's also a significantly easier game, and it just goes to show how much more difficult God of War 3 is compared to this. Like, the Trial of Archimedes does not compare to that extremely broken Scorpion boss fight. It doesn't compare to that endurance fight in that game, where there's sirens, there's wraiths, there's those stupid crystal shield soldiers, and it just goes on forever, which I think is the hardest fight in that game, except for the Cerberus breeder and the satyrs at the end, which is another extremely tough fight. This has that one fight that I don't like, which probably most people won't have any trouble with, and the Trial of Archimedes, which, with the way people are bitching, you'd think the devil had designed it and everyone was having trouble, when in reality a very small community of players that aren't very good at the game are suffering. That's literally it. Because if you have played the older games and you don't quit after one death, you're going to beat the Trial of Archimedes, especially on normal. Man, who the fuck gets stuck on normal? I don't get that. I really don't, and I'm not trying to sound big-headed or a better player in any way, but normal exists to give you a comfortable experience, you know. Normal and easy exists to give you an even more comfortable experience if normal's too much, so, you know, it begs the question, why didn't you play on easy if you're struggling so much with normal? But difficulty spikes are valid, and I don't want people to think that I'm against, you know, giving a developer shit for not realising they had an unfair difficulty spike. Because the entire purpose of difficulty, guys, is to moderate your game for a particular audience. It is. It is to make it so that anybody of any skill level can play through your game. The harder difficulties exist because people want them to exist. And I think we're in a situation where there are very few companies that know how to do difficulty. And I really think it's because they don't put enough time into the balancing of the game. I think hardest difficulties in most dev houses are literally tweaking the parameters on a bunch of stats. They're literally taking aggression from 9 to 12. They're taking damage from 9 to 12. They're taking defense from 9 to 12. That is all they're doing. They're not experimenting with it. They're not trying to get creative with it. And I know why. Because why do they want to drain their resource, which could be spent making something or adding towards a part of the game that everyone's going to play, when a very small percentage of people are even going to attempt these harder difficulties? Because the unfaltering truth about games is there are significantly more people who play them extremely casually, and I don't say casual as a bad thing, because in Dark Souls community, casual is like the worst fucking thing you can say. I just mean people who don't, you know, play a lot of games. And they outnumber the people who do. They really do. As big as you think your culture, and not culture, sorry, that your community is, your group of friends are, it's infinitely smaller than the folks that are just going to bash this on after a few pints, you know, with their buddies, and just, you know, rip some tits off some gorgons and laugh and all that kind of stuff. That's all they're there for. Like, there's a very small percentage of people that know what an iframe is. Yet you talk to somebody who's really deep in action games, and they'll hit you with some fucking jargon. They'll hit you with all the acronyms. But they're a minority, and that's the truth. So it has to be said. But thank you for watching. I hope it's helping, and you take care now.